Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Gaming News, where we discuss all things within the gaming industry. And today we have a bit of a shorter video, as the time that I'm recording this is earlier in the week because I have some things that I need to do for Thursday and Friday, and I might not have the time to record the video for this weekend. To make sure that I make it on time, we are recording this on Wednesday, but there are a couple of pieces that I wanted to touch upon that were important enough to get out ahead of time, so I wanted to still record this video and provide you with content, regardless of the fact that there's a couple of days this week that we are missing, which probably means that next week might have a bit of a longer video, depending on what happens between now and then. So, with that said, let us get started with our first topic, and that is Twitch. Now, some of you may recall earlier in the year there was a big announcement by Twitch saying that they were going to be changing some things with their platform, which included things like the payment split between the partners and how that was going to work. We learned that they may or may not drop the exclusivity. We learned that they were going to do some of these big changes by the time it hit summer. Now, obviously, it's been a few months from this article that was published back in April of 2022, and it talks about the creator pay with a focus on profit. And a lot of people made comments about how this on the surface looked like it was really good. However, the reality is that it does seem like they are shifting gears because they are trying to still be a profitable company. And as many of us know, Twitch has had a bit of difficulty when it comes to profitability lately. And I'm sure that Amazon has been looking at those numbers saying, hey, what's going on, guys? Especially since the wider media has often painted Twitch in a negative light for a number of different reasons, many of them valid reasons, many of them somewhat misguided. However, the point stands that Twitch doesn't necessarily have a fantastic reputation when it comes to the rest of the entertainment industry. Now, with this article, we learned that there would be more incentives for running ads, which they have already implemented this, and some people are using it, some people are not, because the amount of ads that you have to play in order to get that higher incentive is almost prohibitive, especially if you're a smaller content creator. They talked about how they were going to reduce the portion of subscription fees. They had also talked about the partnership program being dropped to 50% from 70%, which most of the partners would get if they're a bigger name partner, and that there would be option to create multiple tiers and set criteria for how people will qualify for these tiers to maybe alter their financial gain from the platform. Now, originally, this seemed like it would be a great idea, especially because they talked about potentially dropping the exclusivity to the platform. And a lot of people found it somewhat prohibitive because you can make a lot more money, or you've maybe seen a lot of big name creators signing on with YouTube or with Facebook Gaming with like $1 million contracts and thinking that you want to try and get there as well, which is not a bad goal to have necessarily. It's just a matter of you have to put in the work and focus on a lot of things and make sure you have a clear established path in order to achieve that kind of a goal. You can't just hope for it to happen that one day I will make it and not put in any of the work or effort or understanding marketing metrics, updating your stream to make it better, making sure that you have a personality and a unique stream space for people to go to. There's a whole bunch of items you have to consider as a streamer if you're looking to be successful. Now, what has happened since then is obviously the ads have changed already on Twitch. The portion of subscription fees hasn't yet come through as far as I know. However, they have talked about the partnership exclusivity. And as of a couple of days ago, they released a article on their official site, on their blog site, which is the FAQs about the exclusivity. So first, the partners and affiliates are allowed to create live content on other platforms. This means that you have more flexibility to explore how to use different off-platform features to further build your community. The following is an FAQ with common questions to help you better understand the changes. So, we already know right off the bat that partners and affiliates will be able to do this because affiliates are also bound by the exclusivity, and to a degree, my understanding is that there are certain points where this is true. And the reason why I say that is because one of the questions is, can I stream simultaneously on other platforms or services, also known as simulcasting? Why they call it that, I don't know. I mean, I guess it makes sense if you're streaming at the same time on multiple platforms. Their response is, we don't allow simulcasting. Twitch-like services that support streaming for extended periods of time, such as YouTube and Facebook, because we believe engaging with two streams at once can lead to a suboptimal experience for your community, which is not technically wrong, although I feel like it shouldn't necessarily be their concern if you are comfortable with streaming on multiple platforms at the same time and you can handle the volume of chat and moderation that it would take to maintain that. It's not necessarily up to Twitch whether or not you feel like you're capable of doing that. They are able to say you can't do that because they still have a vested interest in making their business good. So them saying it's a suboptimal experience for your community is really a way to just say, this sounds really good for you and it's not wrong, but really you're the ultimate one that decides if that is going to be a detriment or not to your community. But I digress. They also say that we know many of you want to use other services to grow your community, so simulcasting on short form mobile services such as TikTok or Instagram Live is allowed. So if you are in the middle of streaming and you want to put together a quick short and have maybe your editor publish that relatively quickly, whether that's right then or after stream or whatever, you can have more engaging content by putting Instagram shorts or TikTok shorts out there, which is not necessarily a bad thing. A lot of streamers will do a quick video saying, hey, I'm live over on twitch.tv. Come check out my stream, see what we're all about, something like that. And it's just a quick message to drive the traffic to Twitch, which is not bad, but it fell into some questions. Now, you can still advertise your channel, your other channels in the Twitch panel. So if you have a YouTube or a TikTok or something like that, you can advertise and you will be able to start a stream on YouTube, but only after you are not streaming on Twitch. So you can't do it at the same time, but if you're streaming on Twitch for a brief bout and then you're doing a stream on YouTube, you can do that without too much difficulty. So it's an interesting situation here because it seems like this is really good. Now, many of you may know who Harris Heller is, and he released a YouTube video, which I will put in the links below. You can watch the video, and he has a number of different thoughts and theories as to why they would make this kind of change, because a lot of people will look at this on surface value and go, hey, the exclusivity isn't there anymore, so I can go and make more money. I can go deal with more content creation and deal with their systems, but there are some legitimate business reasons that Twitch would do such a thing, because in the short term it will be really good, but in the long term it might not be, depending on how you look at it. And Harris Heller brings up a number of different points that you can go take a look at and listen to, and I believe that those points are actually quite valid, and it makes a lot of sense why Twitch might make this kind of decision. But I'm curious to know what your thoughts are about Twitch dropping the exclusivity agreement for partners and affiliates, and whether or not you think it might be good long term or not. And if you watch Harris's video, let me know how you feel about his thoughts on it too, because I'm kind of curious to see if you're in alignment with it or if there's other things that maybe haven't been considered. So I'd really love to know what you're thinking about Twitch and their changes for this summer. Next up, I want to talk very briefly about Xbox. Now, I came across an article on IGN about Phil Spencer from Xbox talking about the Activision Blizzard deal. Now, we haven't talked about Activision Blizzard in quite some time, and I was going to be looking up information to see if anything had progressed on the deal, if anything progressed on the lawsuits and the other situations that are going on at the same time. And I didn't have that much time to take a look, but I did come across this and I thought I would bring it to your attention. So, Phil Spencer is very keen on this deal between Microsoft and Activision Blizzard, which is set to finalize next year. And then we will find out what happens with the IPs, what happens with Bobby Kotick, what happens with the lawsuits if they're finally dealt with. There's a whole host of reasons why I'm very curious to see what happens next year when this deal goes through and what Microsoft is going to have to do at that point in time. But right now, he is very optimistic. He said that I feel good about the progress that we've been making, but I go into the process supportive of people who maybe aren't as close to the gaming industry, asking good, hard questions about what is our intent? What does this mean? If you play it out over 5 years, is this constricting a market? Is it growing a market? So he's got a lot of really good questions and good thoughts when it comes to this particular deal. And of course he would, because obviously they wouldn't shell out that much money if it wasn't potentially a good deal, right? So the thing is, the deal has undergone widespread scrutiny since Microsoft announced it would purchase Activision Blizzard for $68.7 billion back in January. The deal has already been investigated for potential insider trading, and the UK has since begun probing the acquisition to ensure the deal is good for consumers. I've never done a $70 billion deal, so I don't know what my confidence means, added Spencer. I will say the discussions we've been having seem positive. Now, if the deal goes through, it will see Microsoft own one of the biggest gaming studios in the world. But don't worry, the company assures consumers that console exclusives are something we're just going to see less and less of. So this is part of Phil Spencer's mission, is to get rid of console exclusivity and to allow games to come onto PC through the Xbox Game Pass And Sony is also pushing forward an initiative to help get some games onto PC as well, because with the scalping and chip shortages and everything else that has happened throughout the last couple of years, it becomes increasingly more difficult to rely on the sales of consoles when people are less and less inclined to buy them, especially because of the scalpers. But it's funny to me because it doesn't feel like some of these companies are really keen on stopping the scalpers either. So it's kind of this weird system where if they didn't want to have their games come to PC and they were set on being console exclusive, then they should really protect their product and not sell it to scalpers. But we don't need to worry about that because they still make the money anyways, right? Anyways, I am curious to see how you feel, if you think that it's going to be a positive investment for Xbox to go through with the deal, and if you're as hopeful as Phil Spencer. And I'm curious, if you are hopeful, what you base that impression on, because again, Activision Blizzard has a very shady history lately. Not necessarily the workers in the company. There's still a lot of really good people. There's still a lot of really amazing IPs that exist under the Activision Blizzard title. But in terms of the upper management and how things have progressed over the last few years, are you as optimistic about the acquisition? So let me know how you're feeling in the comments or in Discord. I am just very curious to see where you stand on that particular topic. Next up, we're going to talk very briefly about Valve. Now, the reason I want to talk about Valve is because, as you may be aware, they're releasing the Steam Deck, and the Steam Deck is meant to be able to play the games that you have on Steam on a Switch-like console or platform while you're on the go or while you're sitting at home but don't want to use your computer. Or perhaps you have kids who want to be playing certain games, and so you could potentially give them the Steam Deck to run around with. So there's a number of different benefits to having the Steam Deck, and there have been some mixed reviews depending on where you look. But there's some good news. A lot of people expected that we weren't going to see the Steam Deck until Christmas time, until Q4. But The Verge brings us news. Excellent tidings that your Steam Deck may be coming by the end of September instead of in the fourth quarter of the year. This is fantastic. So not only are you getting your Steam Deck by the end of the year, but you might also see your long-awaited handheld gaming PC even sooner than that. Valve has just announced that a bunch of folks should see their reservations moved up to Q3 instead of Q4, meaning they'll get emailed an opportunity to purchase the 400 plus portable by the end of September, if not sooner. So if it comes out before that, that will be quite impressive, quite the feat, especially because of the track record. Valve, over the last while of talking about the Steam Deck, has been increasing their production of the Steam Deck since its original limited launch, moving from twice weekly emails in April, doubling shipments in June, and then ramping up again in July. And that was enough to not only promise everything outstanding deck reservations would ship by the end of 2022, but also begin launching in Japan, South Korea, Hong Kong, and Taiwan as well. Meaning that you don't have to worry about a chip shortage or anything like that for the PS5 if you still haven't got your console yet. But the fact that they were able to increase production substantially to not only get every outstanding deck order filled, but then to also have a surplus to be able to sell in other countries, that is a massive deal. And to be able to do that all before the fourth quarter of the year is outstanding. So if you've pre-ordered the Steam Deck, keep an eye out for that email because you may get it sooner than you expected, and hopefully you have enough money to shell out to get the thing by the time it gets here, because if you weren't planning for it until several months down the road, you might have to start looking at your financial situation to see, can you handle that price tag this early? So, hopefully, that is some good news for some of you. I hope you're excited about it, but we're just going to move to the last topic of the day, and that is PQube. Now, I came across a tweet a little while ago that indicated something about this situation before seeing this article. So I wanted to bring it up because there has been a bit of an update to the situation, but I wanted to get your thoughts on the matter. So, PQube is accused of exploiting developers' heritage for funding. So, the Indonesian studios claim that UK publisher took advantage of their Indonesian background to obtain and withhold a grant. Now, from the original story, Toj Productions and Mojikin Studio shared today that a Space for the Unbound has been delayed due to PQube Games allegedly using the pair's Indonesian heritage to receive a diversity grant from a well-known platform during August of 2020. The Diversity Fund was a grant fund intended to help underrepresented developers, especially during the pandemic, the two developers wrote in a statement. However, instead of giving those funds to the developers as the grant was intended, PQube Games intentionally withheld information about the grant and used it as leverage for their own commercial gain. Rather than paying the grant money to us, PQube Games hid the facts about the grant's award and added it as a recoupable minimum guarantee and then used it to negotiate the increase of their revenue shares. That is terrible. Absolutely terrible that they would do this. In certain countries, if you receive a grant, for example, here in Canada, if you receive a grant, there are certain terms and conditions that you must meet and you must agree to in order to receive those funds, especially if it's a government grant. And if you do not meet and establish those guidelines for the grants, then the government or the party giving out the grant can recoup that cost, and they can and often will take you to court if you do not give back the money because you clearly breached your contract. Now, I don't know if it's the same or if it's different there in the UK, but I'm assuming that they have their own rules and regulations, which is probably why some of this came to light. So, because of this, Toj Productions and Mojikin have terminated the publishing agreement with PQube Games, but claim that the company is refusing to hand over publishing control on console platforms back to the developer. They said, "We clearly cannot trust PQube Games nor continue to work together for the release of a Space for the Unbound, as PQube Games has fallen considerably short not only of reasonable decency, but also of their obligations to us due to these predatory practices," the statement continued. Now, Game Industry Biz and other people reached out to PQube for a comment about this because there is never just one side to a story. There are usually multiple facets and different reasons. Even if on the surface it looks scummy, there is probably something that the rest of the public is missing. So, what PQube Games said in their statement is, "We have honored all obligations of our publishing agreement and have supported Toge Productions at every stage product development throughout their delays and difficulties. This support has included offering significant further funding over and above grant funding to support development, porting, and marketing. Toge Productions has sought for some time to unilaterally enforce unreasonable revised terms to our agreement, and it is disappointing that, as a result of not achieving that, and despite PQube's significant efforts to accommodate this, they have sought to deal with the matter in this way. We will respond through the appropriate channels." Now, I have searched for more information about this. I have checked the website to see if this comment was officially stated or if they put this anywhere out on Twitter. And as far as I know, the statements made from PQube came directly from the horse's mouth and straight to the news outlets that contacted them. As in, there is no established trail of what is going on from both ends. And I do believe that in the coming days, PQube is going to address this situation, because if they're saying that they have honored their agreements and they've paid more than the grant and dealt with and helped with the difficulties and the delays to releasing this title, then they potentially could have some recourse there. Again, I do not know UK law or what procedure is in this particular situation, but it seems like there's a couple of things going on here on both sides, both on the developer side and on the publisher side. So I'm not necessarily going to throw PQube under the bus, but I'm also not going to throw the developers under the bus either. I think that more information needs to be sought before any determination can be made here. But keep an eye out for what is going on with this situation, because there are some companies, some publishing companies, that will screw over the developers. And unfortunately, some of those issues just do not come to light, and some of the publishers are still able to continue with these bad business practices. Not to say that they all do that, but to simply say that it can be difficult to see the trail, especially when you're looking from the guise of one statement released that can't necessarily be corroborated except through other gaming websites that have said the exact same information as this. So, if you're looking at this situation thinking PQube is scummy, please wait until you see their official released statement and what happens moving forward. Because if there is something incredibly bad, then the developers potentially will pursue legal action against PQube. And if that happens, then you know that there's a possibility that PQube was doing something shady. But until that happens, there's nothing to necessarily support this in this particular container. If PQube has done other things, I am not familiar with those things, but I don't want people to sit there and jump out of the gate and raise pitchforks saying, hey, we are no longer a fan of PQube Games, just based on a couple of articles that all say the exact same information, which I have now relayed to you. So keep an eye out for the stuff that will be coming out, because I do believe there will be an official statement in the future that isn't just going to come from news websites. It will come from PQube Games directly. But with all of that said, thanks for being here today and dealing with the shorter week of news coverage, I felt that all of it was pertinent to talk about, and I want to hear your opinions on any and all of the topics we've covered today, whether that is the exclusivity dropping from Twitch partners to the Microsoft and Activision Blizzard deal to Steam Deck being launched earlier than expected, or of course, the stuff revolving around PQube Games. And thank you very much for being here. You guys have a fantastic week, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.